This is not my story. This is my aunt's story. I'm in her house because there's a family reunion. My aunt, let's call her Sarah, and her ex-husband, Dick. This happened almost 10 years ago. My aunt Sarah discovered her husband was cheating on her with a 25-year-old. He was 49, and my aunt was 42. They had 2 kids. Now, a little backstory. My aunt was a stay-at-home mom. She was very health conscious. In our culture, people tend to overfeed you. But she was against it because people in our family have heart conditions and diabetes. Dick was someone who liked to eat and lead a lazy life. My aunt always pushed him to do some exercise. The reason is, none of the men in his family lived past 55. She wanted him to stay alive for the kids. She also cared for his health, did all his chores, and was a good wife overall. But it wasn't enough for Dick. He went on and cheated on her and blamed her, because when he is with his mistress, he feels alive. The mistress doesn't force him to eat healthy or exercise. The mistress doesn't nag him all the time. My aunt was devastated. Her husband left her, and soon she is going to be a single mom. So instead of wallowing in pain, she packed up his stuff and went to the mistress's house. She left those bags and had a long list. The list contained the number of medications he needs, what he needs to eat, his schedules, where he shops, what he likes to eat, etc. It's basically a manual of how to keep her deadbeat husband functioning. The way my aunt described the mistress's expression is priceless. It was like as if there was an explosion in front of her. A few days after she left, she would get constant calls from the mistress about her husband. She would complain he doesn't like the food she makes because it is not like hers. Even her ex-husband had the audacity to call her when his girlfriend wasn't home so that she can come and cook. She would always hang up. They both called multiple times, and my aunt turned them away each time. She got backlash for not caring, but she was stubborn in her decisions. Over time, her kids also stopped visiting their dad because their dad knows nothing about the kids. It's been 10 years. She is divorced. She works as a teacher in a school. Her kids are all established and take care of their mother. They barely talk to their dad. Aunt never remarried. I think she doesn't want to either. On the other hand, Dick and his mistress are miserable. The last time I saw them, Dick looked fat. Like really fat. He had a heart attack last year. The mistress looks like she aged 20 years. She looks miserable. And whenever she looked at Dick, it seems like she wanted to decay him. I guess my aunt was the only one keeping him alive. But I'll give him credit for making it past 55. He wanted aunt to come over to the mistress's house to cook for him? The gall! I hope she laughed in his face. Your aunt is the queen of her life. She was disrespected by a foolish man and his insecure mistress, and yet she rose above their cheating to deliver the lesson of a lifetime. Kudos to her. I don't understand a culture that is all right with men treating women as less than the amazing humans they are. But I guess that mistress hasn't learned that someone else's husband shouldn't be the partner you hang your future on. Sad for her, but she chooses to continue with that lifestyle. She was doing too much with the list. Should have let them figure it out themselves, because I bet he didn't even know half the list. I am 46 male and am currently engaged to Mary, 38 female. She is a wonderful woman, intelligent and kind, and she is the woman who I want to spend the rest of my life with. We have both agreed that we want to raise a child together, but have found out that Mary is infertile and we decided to try IVF. IVF costs around $1,200, maybe more, but we've both agreed that it's worth every penny if it means a child. I have 3 children of my own, who are aged 22 female, 17 male, 8 male. For the most part, Mary and my kids are very close, and have found a common ground between them. My daughter doesn't have an issue with Mary and I having kids, but she is angry that I'm paying for the treatment. She has made several statements regarding how, some of the time, treatment doesn't even work, and we're wasting our money, and she's especially angry that I'm spending the money on Mary. My daughter has had the same laptop for the past 2 years. Although it's in fairly good condition, she wants a new one and says the money should go towards that, or to a newer house, or to her college fund, instead of something that might not even work. We've gotten into several arguments where my daughter has called me an a-hole for doing this. I'm worried that if I choose one side over the other, that I'll permanently fracture a precious relationship. Not the a-hole. Your daughter is an adult and can pay for her own wants, because they're not needs. Not the a-hole. I'm sorry, this is an adult requesting for a 2-year-old laptop to be changed. How spoiled is she? She's not entitled to her father's money and is acting like an a-hole. You do IVF, in vitro fertilization. Daughter should GAJ, get a job. Not the a-hole, but boy is your daughter an entitled little princess. And super jealous you want to have a family with your fiancé. She's also probably worried new siblings could mean she won't be daddy's princess anymore, and that there may be less to inherit. I am a 31-year-old Japanese woman who has been married to my husband, who is 34, for 4 years. He is African American, and I currently live in the U.S. with him. We've been trying since we got married to have a baby, but we're struggling, so we went to get tested to figure out if anything was amiss, and learned that my husband is infertile. We began to look into our options in fertility treatment planning to get a sperm donor. My parents found out about this and told me they'd pay for all my fertility treatment no matter how long it takes, on the condition I pick a Japanese donor. I was shocked by this as I'd been wanting to pick an African American donor to match my husband. They pointed out that if I'd been able to naturally have kids with my husband, that'd be one thing, but since I was picking anyway, to just do that. I got angry with them and it led to an argument, and they told me just to think about it. I later told my husband, expecting him to be as outraged as me. He thought about it for a few minutes before telling me we should do it. I was shocked and told him they were being super racist with this, and it didn't bother him as much as it bothered me. He told me yes, it was gross, but we weren't living in Japan, so don't see my parents often, and if we weren't spending a lot of money on fertility treatment, then we'd have more money to spend on our eventual child. He told me that it didn't matter to him what ethnicity our child was, as they'd still be our child. I won't lie, I fell in love a little harder with that statement, and I know logically it makes sense. But I hate this implication that it's better if I pick a Japanese donor so my child is fully Japanese and not mixed. If he's for it, I should just go along with it, but I'm just so angry right now. Am I the a-hole for denying this if my husband is okay with it? Info. Are your parents likely to ask for money back if, say, hypothetically, the baby came out and wasn't what they expected? I'm not saying you should deceive your parents. I'm just saying, would they? I am usually so anti-lying. But in this circumstance, I think dishonesty is called for. Have them pay. Pick the donor you want anyway. When the baby is born, just say, "It's a miracle. One of my husband's swimmers must have made it through after all." Not the a-hole. Your parents are racists, and you are right to be absolutely pissed. I think your husband is an absolute treasure, though. If you feel gross about it, then don't do it. But it sounds like your husband just wants to have a family with you no matter what. A bit of context. My mother-in-law grew up in a wealthy family. She had a pony as a child, and her father ran a number of successful car dealerships. By the time she was 17, she received a new car every year on her birthday. When she finished her first year of college, her parents sent her to Europe to go backpacking in a brand new Volkswagen Beetle convertible for 2 months. After her parents passed away, she inherited a substantial amount, but followed the advice of her older brother and invested. She is out of touch with the cost of living. She has a professional assistant who does all her shopping. Last night, while looking on while her grandchildren were playing, she commented that my eldest daughter needs a new iPad. Her current one is a 6th gen. So, without asking, she starts the online ordering process for the latest iPad. But not just any iPad, but an iPad Pro with all the whistles and bells, roughly $1,600. And then says that I will pay her back when it arrives. When I told her to stop and that she's overstepping, then the crap really hit the fan. She starts going on about how my children are going without, and how this will negatively affect them as they get older. In reality, they don't go without. My wife, who wasn't there at the time, and I provide well for our children, meeting all of their needs and selectively granting their wants. They are fed nutritious food, clothed well, and attend a good school. We can afford to buy the iPad, but in my opinion, it's an unnecessary purchase. One of my girls is learning soccer and dance, her choice, and the other is now a black belt in Taekwondo, again, her choice. But in their grandmother's mind, they're missing out. They don't go skiing in Vermont or take horseback riding lessons, or own a pony. The argument escalated quickly, with her son, firstborn, coming to her rescue. He's forever borrowing money from his mom. I was being ungrateful and boorish, so I packed up the kids and left. Upon arriving home, she left 5 voicemails on our answering machine. They start out cordial, directed to my wife, and rapidly go downhill. She has no concept of what she's doing and the consequences. Am I the a-hole for putting my foot down and stopping this behavior before it gets out of control? More info. My wife doesn't want to stir up trouble with the mother-in-law. She doesn't like confronting her mom. For me, this was one step too far over the line. This is where the "am I the a-hole" stems from. New update. The brother-in-law has been texting me all day, questioning my decision to not let his mother-in-law, help me. He bragged that she purchased a new iMac for his daughter a few weeks back, for school, but keep in mind, the school supplied Chromebooks to every student for virtual learning. His reasoning is that she won't have to squint at a smaller screen. Mommy Dearest dropped $5,000 plus. Oh, and she's 11. If I didn't love my wife so much, I'd head to the hills. There was no indication they were this way while dating, or when we first married. My wife's reasoning is that her mother is elderly and won't be with us much longer. Not the a-hole. It's your kids, and assuming you'll pay $1,600 in the blink of an eye is embarrassingly out of touch. It's almost confusing. It would be one thing if she ordered it for the grandkid in the blink of an eye as a gift. That alone could be overstepping. But to expect to be reimbursed, that seems off-brand. Not the a-hole. Protect your daughters from being spoiled rotten and ending up like that, and protect yourself from being tricked or forced into debt. Yeah, waste a fortune on every new version gadget that comes out is one of the most disgusting trends of the 21st century. I, 25, was diagnosed with a treatable cancer back in September. I had just finished 6 months of recovering from notoriously painful surgeries on both of my feet, and I was so excited to be done with all the doctor's appointments and physical therapy. A month after getting off crutches, I found out I had cancer. I'm a bit estranged from my family. We live in different states, and I don't feel respected or loved by them most of the time. I still call on holidays and birthdays. I still went home every year before virus. But it's a difficult relationship, and I keep my distance out of self-preservation. For 3 years, I've been asking to go to therapy with them to work on our relationships, but they are not interested in doing that. I want a better relationship with them, but I'm not going to tolerate being treated poorly. They are quite wealthy, and I know it's an extreme privilege to grow up in a family with financial means. I have asked for financial help twice in my adult life, both times for about $500, and I paid it back to them. Those times I asked for money, I was 18, 19 years old, and just needed a little help with rent, and paid them back as soon as possible. I'd estimate them to be in the top 3% to 5% of wealth, and they don't live in an expensive city. I didn't tell them about the cancer right away because of these reasons. They were about to go on a family trip to Europe, taking my siblings and their partners along. I was not invited. The reason being, they didn't think I would be interested. This trip was going to happen during one of my scheduled cancer surgeries, and I was worried if they decided to cancel their trip, that I would have it held over my head for eternity that they didn't get to go enjoy Europe. My mother came down for a week during my feet surgeries. I was planning on friends helping, but she kind of wedged herself into my recovery. It was horrible. I knew I would not be able to walk for the first week and would need a lot of help. My mother was well aware of this and promised she would take care of me. My mom complained constantly and would guilt-trip me when I'd ask for help. Complained about having to go to the pharmacy to pick up my meds. Complained when I asked her to bring food. I had even meal prep, so all she had to do was bring a box from the fridge to me. She has body issues and was trying to get me to lose weight by fasting, which I am not interested in, nor would any doctor recommend I lose weight. She said there is no reason I should even be eating the week after surgery, because all I'm doing is laying in bed. Because of this, she would usually bring me only one meal a day. I had to take a lot of pain meds and needed to eat food with them or else I'd get nauseous. So I was nauseous most of the time. Another thing that I'm still trying to understand was that my mom kept taking my wheelchair out of my room and keeping it in the living room. So every time I needed to use the bathroom, I would have to ask her to bring back my wheelchair. She'd then complain about that. I begged her to leave the damn wheelchair in my room, and almost every time I took a nap, I'd wake up and it would be gone again. One day she left my apartment for 6 or 7 hours without saying anything, and left the wheelchair in the living room. I had a ducking breakdown because I needed to pee so badly, and had to make the decision of either pissing the bed I'm supposed to be resting in for the next week, or attempting to painfully hobble on my broken feet to the bathroom. I chose pain, made it to the toilet, and sat there for over an hour crying, because I no longer had a full bladder to motivate me to endure the horrible pain of walking back to my bed. I did not trust that they would be a supportive part of my cancer recovery. I feel like most of the conversations I have with my family end up being very emotionally draining and hurtful. I was scared to tell them. I had no idea how they would react, and I didn't trust that it would be a kind, loving, or supportive conversation. I had so much on my plate and I didn't think I could handle it. I was planning on calling both of my parents to let them know I had cancer after they got back from their long Euro family vacation. I ended up only making it through the call with my mom and not having the energy to call my dad because I knew she would tell him herself that day. She was upset I didn't tell her sooner and made the conversation mostly about herself. When she finally got around to asking if there was anything she could do to help, I shared the ways I needed support. The biggest was financial. I said it would be a huge help if they wanted to send some groceries or help with rent or some of the many medical bills, because I was still sick and not able to work just yet. She wasn't interested in that and said something along the lines of, I needed to do my part and get a job to help the economy. We live in the USA. I felt like she didn't believe that I was sick, and I kept explaining how terrible I felt, how hard it was to just have the energy to take a shower. She kept saying she wanted to come and see me, and I had to make it clear that in order to do that, she would need to get the virus vaccine because of how immunocompromised I am. That made her upset, and she then turned the conversation into being about her vaccine theories, about how she has a great immune system, and I had enough. I ended the call and felt so defeated and unsupported. Over the next few months, she would call me and ask how I was doing and how she could help. I was not doing great and kept saying that the biggest way to help would to help alleviate some of the financial stress. She'd then go off about how I needed a job and basically give me the whole pull yourself up by the bootstraps talk. My dad didn't really reach out while I was sick, and I'm sure he was hurt I didn't tell him directly. The final straw was that my mom texted me a photo of the new project she hired contractors to do. She has a lot of horses, a big barn and pastures on the property for them all to live happy lives. But she recently adopted a miniature pony, and she didn't want him to stay in the big barn. So she hired professional contractors to come out and build a tiny house for a tiny horse, next to the 12-star barn for the regular-sized horses, but yet refused to send some money for groceries while her daughter deals with cancer. I understand it's their money and they can spend it how they choose. I just thought I'd be prioritized over this new tiny horse. I feel like I'm being entitled, and just because I was born to a wealthy family doesn't mean I should expect my parents to help me. I'm so angry and confused, and I feel like I shouldn't be asking them for help. I don't think they are able to be emotionally supportive, so the only way they can help is with their money, and they aren't interested in that. I feel like an a-hole asking my friends and partner for help with paying for expensive medicines when I come from a wealthy family. Part of me understands why my parents spend money on my siblings so easily, helped one buy a house this year, and I believe is helping the other pay for $70,000 a year grad school, and why they don't with me. My siblings don't push back. They go along with whatever my parents say, whereas I don't tolerate some of my parents' behaviors, and I'm not as close with them because of that. Am I an a-hole for expecting help even though I'm not close with my parents?